Welcome to Creative Conversations. I'm Roger Humphrey. In this episode, I'm pleased to welcome guitarist, composer, teacher, David Leisner. Please join us as we talk about his latest album, composing, his battle with vocal dystonia, and much, much more. Before we begin, please take a moment to hit the subscribe or follow button. It's a little thing, but it helps the channel a lot. Thanks. And we are welcoming to the show guitarist, composer David Leisner, and teacher, I should say. Hi, David. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roger. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. This should. I've been looking forward to this. I have to sort of qualify a little bit. I am a huge fan, and I don't want to gush too much, but it may happen.
Well, thank you.
So you are, of course, reading stuff, trying to get ready to talk to you because we've never met before. You are largely or consider yourself a self-taught guitarist and composer. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, I have had lessons with a number of people. I mean, the person I studied with the longest was John Duart, who I studied with for 9 months when I was in London. Second longest was David Starobin, who I studied with for 6 weeks at the Bowden Festival. And then from there on, it was people that I had individual lessons with. On occasion, people like violist Karen Tuttle and another violist, Robert Carroll with the BSO, and the pianists, number of pianists, Seymour Bernstein, and many people. But these were all one-off lessons here and there, and pretty much the same is true with composing. I had some significant composing lessons with David Del Tredici, orchestration, an incredible couple of sessions with Virgil Thompson. They were literally just 2 short sessions, and in which he taught me more than anybody could possibly teach me in over years, about text setting and things like that. So, and my main mentor in college was Richard Winslow, who wrote me a wonderful piece, which I've been playing recently again. But Dick Winslow never taught me privately, and he really was more of a mentor because the classes that I took with him were theory classes. So I really am mostly self-taught. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else, but it's the way that it was my path.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and so there was no classical guitar. I've taken, like yourself, I've taken a couple of lessons here and a couple of lessons there, but largely I'm a self-taught guitar player from the ground up. And and I've told my students, you don't have to take lessons to get good at this. It takes 20 years to do about 4 years worth of work. I mean, so if you got the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's, everybody's different. I mean, some people really need that week to week reinforcement and teaching, and I was a different kind of person. I mean, and there's pros and cons to it, like with everything. So it just happens to be the path that I went on, and the path that you went on, and okay, so here we are.
It seems to have worked.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was listening to your latest album. It just came out last Friday, I believe.
Yes.
Charms to Soothe. I have to tell you, I absolutely love this. I'm in a position, I'm friends with a lot of musicians, and so I get a lot of CDs. Sometimes I'll buy them just to support the artist, and sometimes I'll just give them to me, and I'll listen to them, out of courtesy because it's just rude not to. So I gave yours my typical courtesy listen, and I'm like, okay, I got to listen to this one again. And so
nice.
now I'm listening to it because I wanna,
Oh, that's lovely.
One of the things that I like about it, is your choice of material. A lot of smaller pieces and etudes and so on and so forth. How did that decision? What was that decision process like?
Well, it really was about playing pieces that I have wanted to record for a long time, almost all of them, with the exception of Leonard Schultz, which we might talk briefly about. But um, all these other pieces by Sohr, Giuliani, Mertz, Regondi, these are pieces I've known for decades, have always wanted to record. Some of them I've been playing in concert quite recently, and I just love these pieces so much and have never had an occasion or a context in which to record them. And this album felt to me like a kind of a smorgasbord kind of album. Uh, Really another kind of favorites album for me. Um, and uh, and the pieces kind of chose themselves in a way. It's just
Well,
I love the pieces.
I was reminded a little bit of, well, first, I guess back in the 70s, Leona Boyd did a miniatures album
Mm.
that did a lot of things like that. And then, oh golly, 15 or 20 years ago, I'm not sure, Nick Galusis did a recording of Soar music, and he did like all of Opus 60,
Ah,
all 24 etudes.
yes.
Um, and and we we listen to our students play them or struggle through them, and we play them ourselves, but we kind of I tend to rush through these because I have so many students, I kind of run from one to the next. And to listen to a real artist get a hold of these, and that's kind of what I was feeling about these. Some of these pieces I know, I've played. Some of these pieces I've heard, I've never really played,
Yes.
other than Schultz, and we do need to talk about him. Um, but uh, uh, but again, like I say, I tend to rush through them to play them for my students, and I move on. And and to listen to somebody who really is a true artist like yourself play these things, and there's just something so beautiful about these little pieces. And so I was just thrilled to hear them. On a personal note, also, I don't perform anymore. I stopped performing a few years ago, and and as a result, and I'm mostly retired. So as a result, I don't work on any big concert works. I was never much of a concert artist to begin with. I'm a little truth in advertising here, but but I had thought to myself a couple of weeks ago that I really need to go back and play some of these etudes and play them properly. And so this is kind of the kick in the rear that I needed also
Good,
to kind of
good.
get me going on some of these things because they are absolutely lovely. So I thank you for making the recording. I will recommend it to my students, and I also
Thank
belong to
you.
the Mid-Michigan Classical Guitar Society, and I will make a mention to that fine group as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And basically what you're describing as yourself as a listener, that's exactly the kind of listener that I'm aiming for, at least with some of these pieces, because some of them are very easy pieces, pieces that most students can play. And it's exactly that I want to point out, that these pieces are little gems. I mean, some of Sohr's best music is the very short etudes.
Yes.
They're beautiful gems, and I don't personally feel he was as strong with the longer forms, but the short forms are little jewels, and if you play them like little jewels, they have this whole world of beauty in them that's so thrilling. It's just an enriching.
I read a review of Tarraga's music some years ago, and the reviewer had made the comment that Tarraga never really wrote any large pieces, but nobody has ever written a song as well as Tarraga. You know, he was just the absolute master of the song form, and I tend to agree with that. I just and but the same with Soar. Yeah, those little etudes. You know what he did, like four collections, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking that's what it was. So
I think there's even more. I can't remember now. There's Opus 6, Opus 31, 35.
and 60.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
I think Opus 60 was his last opus. I think it was, and it was
Yeah,
a collection of
right.
24. Yeah.
That's
So I
right.
mean, he apparently had some connection with with etudes. So, but yeah, it's beautiful music. I know my students love the music of the 19th century in general.
Oh,
Uh,
that's good to hear.
oh, they love, they can quote Carulli, Carcassi. I mean,
Okay.
Soar, Giuliani, Aguado. We haven't got to Rogondi yet. We'll get there, and then
Gondi's hard. Yeah.
and then
Get him to play Maciek. That's the guy
okay,
really overlooked. He's not on this album because I've got more Maciek in mind for a future album, but
ah, so,
he's the great overlooked composer of the 19th century for guitar.
and a former student of mine and current friend of mine, Brad DeRoche, and I don't know if you know him or
I
know
know
of
the
him.
name. Yeah, I don't think I've met
Yeah, Brad did his DMA work on Arcos and has become a huge proponent. So every time he plays, does a concert, there's at least one piece by Arcos in there,
him. Yes.
and it's another like Merritt's, like you did with Merritt's, and teaching the rest of us about this guy. He's doing that with Arcos, and it's lovely stuff.
Beautiful.
So, well, Schultz, let's talk about him for a second.
Yeah,
That
sure.
was a name that I was not familiar with, and I listened to the pieces and I went, gotta do some.
Good, good. They're so beautiful. They were introduced to me by an Australian guitarist named Daniel Nistico. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. Um, who introduced me to this set of etudes. It was online somewhere, and then I, did some investigating. I found out there was some other music. There's not a huge amount of it, but there's quite a bit. He was born, oh dear, was he born in Germany or Austria? I don't remember, shame on me. But he lived much of his life in England. So what probably began as Leonhard Schultz became Leonard Schultz or Schultz, whatever they called him in England.
Yes.
And these pieces are very deeply beautiful and thoughtful pieces, and they're just delightful to play, and they're very challenging. And challenging, I don't mean like virtuosic challenging. They're musically challenging. Like one of them, for instance, most of the melody is in the middle voice, and you've got to bring out the middle voice. That's the number 6 etude, and that's not easy to do,
No.
especially to do it, lyrically in a singing way. And then there's another one, number 9, that's a slur study, but you're slurring from an offbeat to an onbeat while playing the bass note on the onbeat.
Oh,
If you can imagine that, it's quite difficult to do. And then once you get used to it, it's great. It's wonderful. Why didn't other people do this? He's very inventive in that way and musically very satisfying, I think. There's only 3 little etudes I put on the album. I could have easily put more, but these were my 3 favorites.
they
Uh,
are they are beautiful. I'm grateful that you introduced me to them. Hopefully other
Wonderful.
people.
Thank you.
That's this is really wonderful music. It really is. The source stuff I've played, and I love those pieces. Now I got to go back and play them again.
Good. Good.
So I know that there is a kind of a trend right now. Some guitarists going towards uh, period instruments to play this music. What's your feeling about that?
Um, I think it's great. It's not for me, partly because I don't feel an affinity for that instrument. Just when I put it in my hands and play through the music, it just doesn't do it for me yet. I don't particularly like the sound. Um, I don't like the feel of it. I love it when I hear certain people. There are some people who play it. Actually, a former student of mine played his recital recently on a 19th century copy, and he was playing a lot of that music from that era. And boy, it just sounded so lovely. It just sounded like I was stepping into that era, listening to somebody play in a literally like a salon environment, which is
Uh-huh.
meant to be played. But personally, I just so much prefer the expansiveness of the guitar, the expressive possibilities, the dynamic range, the whole sound of it. It's just for me, I just love making music of that era on a contemporary instrument. But I love it when other people do play it on their own, on the 19th century instrument too.
I
So
think I kind of mirror your opinion. It's not for me, but I like the idea of the salon playing. I've actually hosted a couple of house concerts here,
mm,
and the guitar works so well in that environment, and it
perfect.
it really is. And of course, one of my teaching heroes is Nadia Boulanger, and so I go, well, I'll have my little house concert.
Nice.
Kind of pretend like I'm all of that in a bag of chips,
Great.
But
Yeah.
it really it's our little house here isn't terribly large, and so having a small intimate setting and then glass of wine and some cheese afterwards, makes for a pretty nice Sunday afternoon.
And the thing is too, when, once in a while I'll have a little house concert here, either of my students or myself preparing for another recital somewhere. And people always say, that the guitar is more visceral in that environment. Like the effect of it really gets your body, like, in the way that in a concert hall, a pianist or a violinist, you might really feel it in your body. But in the concert hall, you don't feel that with the guitar because it's making a much smaller sound. In the context of a living room, whatever, then as the guitarist plays loud, and it might actually rattle your body, or you might really feel it just a little more intensely than you would with the distance of a concert hall. So yeah, I love the salon environment.
I had the honor of being on faculty at a small college. Actually, they're now a University of Olivet in southwestern Michigan,
Hmm.
and uh, and I created the guitar program there, and we had a recital hall that only seated 110 people,
Wow,
but it was purpose built as a recital hall.
perfect.
Big tall ceilings, and the stage pictures of the stage remind me of uh, the photos I've seen of Carnegie Hall. Just the way the stage was laid out. I mean, it was a beautiful place,
Wow.
and several of the guitar players that I've had to show up there to come and perform on my behalf just said, "Oh man, I want to do an album here," because the sound was
Oh, wow.
just. But the thing was, you could sit on stage and you could quietly lop notes off that back wall all afternoon. You just didn't have to push the guitar at all. So it was really wonderful. But I say that by way to follow up on what you were saying. I don't know if you know Robert Gruca. Robert Gruca. He works with. He's in Cleveland. He works with Jason Vio quite a bit. But anyway, Bob's a former student of mine, and he came there to do a concert. I remember one of my students who was in attendance told me afterwards, she said that she had grown up in the Detroit area from a very affluent family and was used to going to the ballet and to the opera and to the symphony, as well as taking in the museums and plus doing the big rock concerts that come into town and so on.
Mm.
She said, "This is the first time in my life," she says, "I went into a small room." She said one guy came out very quietly, sat in the middle of the stage with no amplification, and she said, and very quickly created an entire universe and sucked me into it.
There you go.
And I thought, bingo.
That's bingo is right. That is the beauty and the strength of the guitar is that it pulls you in rather than goes out to you.
Right.
If it's played beautifully, and if it
Yeah.
is, I mean, the masters of that, some of the masters were Segovia and Bream, who knew just how to do that.
Right. Right. I was fortunate enough to see Bream in concert twice, and it was just still to this day. I mean, the last time I saw him was in '84,
Yeah,
and I saw him in '76 and '84, and it was just like,
wow.
you know. it's still one of the more magical
Oh,
concerts,
oh,
just amazing. So,
yeah.
so now you do a lot of, um, you've premiered a lot of music over the
Yes, I have.
years.
Yeah.
How closely do you work with the composers on
Oh, very closely. Very closely.
that?
It's one of the most enjoyable, fulfilling, meaningful aspects of music making for me, and I believe for any musician who's involved in this process. The most remarkable instance of that collaboration, in my experience, was David Del Tredici, who recently passed away. Uh, Del Tredici was one of the great American composers, and I was very fortunate that he agreed to the commission for a piece which I requested as 10 to 12 minutes, not wanting to be, you know, too demanding for what I could afford for the commission. Um, and he was very happy to accept the commission and ended up writing me a 35-minute piece for guitar in four enormous movements, unbelievably difficult and demanding, and it's mostly counterpoint.
Oh, wow.
It's just
Buckle up.
buckle up, is right. That is right. Well, first of all, David had barely written for the guitar. He'd written really for banjo and uh, mandolin and various orchestral contexts. David is famous for these huge hour-long orchestral works, often with a vocal soloist. Um, some of the seminal works of our time is a work called Final Alice is an amazing piece. If you're curious to give it a listen at some point, you need an hour to listen to it. But anyway, David was not used to writing for the guitar and was very aware of it and very humble about um, you know giving me uh, the say about what to do to make it more guitaristic and so on. So we would literally get together, usually in person, sometimes over the phone, twice a week for, I think it was almost 2 months, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. It's been 2010 or '09 when this happened. Um, and we would be together for an hour or two at least at a time. And it was this intense back and forth, where I would play passages for him, things that he had written. And I would say, I'm suggesting this, and how about that? And he'd say, I love that, but I hate that. And, that's completely not what I had in mind. So you can't do that. And, that sort of thing. Sometimes I would even have the goal to suggest compositional changes, which he took just fine because I'm a composer. He knew that. He worked with me, so he trusted my compositional instinct as well. And there was this intense working together and to fabricate this piece. It was very, very exciting and one of the deepest honors of my life to have this collaboration with this great composer. So yeah, that was the most extreme example, but all the times I have commissioned or premiered a composer's works, I have worked intensely and intensively with the composer because I always want to realize that composer's wishes to the best of my ability.
Now, put sitting on the other side of the table as a composer, and now you're working with a performer. How's that work for you?
Yeah. Well, it's virtually the same thing. I mean, I try to be as open as I can to different possibilities because yes, of course, I had something in mind and I can easily get into a tunnel about that, had something very specific in mind. But I think you have to be open to things as a composer when a performer, especially one whom you respect, says, I understand what you're doing, but that doesn't work for me. How about this fingering or that fingering? Or how about, maybe this note should go down an octave or up, those kinds of things are always welcome. And personally, I'm not Stravinsky who wrote in pen when he, when he composed, I'm not that kind of composer. So I can revise endlessly on a piece. So when when a performer that I'm working with that's commissioned me or whatever comes up with these ideas, I do my best to work with them. And once in a while, I have to put my foot down and say, nope, sorry. Just like David She said with me, that's not what I had in mind. That's against the grain of what I'm going for here.
I took some time on YouTube and I was listening to a couple of your compositions as played by others, and one was the samba from Dances in the Madhouse,
Oh yeah.
which I liked. That was very nice. And I have a friend of mine. We played guitar flute duets for 25 years, and I thought, well, we should have gotten into that one. That would have been fun, you know. And then the other one was that I liked was Seagulls for
Oh
guitar and
yeah.
voice.
Voice, yeah, soprano or tenor and guitar. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is a soprano in this particular
Yeah,
case. A
I
couple
play.
of students, perhaps, in a recital. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
interesting.
But uh, and at Peabody maybe or someplace. And or
Oh,
no,
I see here.
your old stomping ground.
NEC, New England
Yeah,
Conservatory.
right.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, the thing that I liked about it, I'm a huge fan of chamber, and the thing I liked about it was that it wasn't just voice with guitar accompaniment, that it was almost a pas de deux. Uh,
Exactly.
this this real interesting, a real duet,
Mm.
where the guitar really had its own voice. And it wasn't just in a supporting role. They kind of supported each other. I love that. I just thought it was an absolutely lovely piece of music.
Thank you so much. That poem that it's setting is a poem about seagulls and watching the flight of seagulls and the freedom that they
Uh-huh.
have in the air. And it's relating it to freedom of form, as the writer, the poet, is also thinking about freedom of form. Um, and so it was just that image that I was trying to create with the guitar and the voice, that they were two things that were floating and swerving in the air in their own free way, but yet related to each other, but still maintaining freedom. So that's what that piece was about.
I really enjoyed it a lot, so and I've just really over the years come to appreciate the guitar in a chamber setting, not just multiple guitars, which is fine too.
Yeah.
And of course the guitar flute combination it is as normal as a string quartet. I mean, it's just they just fit so well.
Yes, they
But
do.
I've played and even arranged some music for a guitar, flute, and clarinet, which was kind of fun.
It's a
Uh,
nice combination. I have a piece for that combination. Extreme.
and guitar. So guitar, I arranged a Vivaldi piece for guitar and two violins, which was kind of fun.
Nice.
Um, so and different things like that. So the guitar is an important part of the ensemble, but it's not the centerpiece, number one, and it's not just an accompaniment as it can be. And I just really think that guitar and chamber could be explored more, I think, in my own
Well,
opinion.
in my compositional output, my music for the guitar is mostly guitar chamber music. It's very much intentional on my part because there's lots of solo guitar repertoire, but there's not enough of guitar and other instruments. And I also feel just pedagogically that it's important for guitarists to get out of the guitar ghetto, so to speak, and play with other instruments, because we learn a lot playing with other instrumentalists and singers, things that we wouldn't learn from other guitarists. So I have written an enormous amount of music for guitar and other instruments, guitar and string quartet, guitar and winds, guitar and strings, uh, you know, guitar and flute. I have the Cavatina duo recorded an entire album of my music for guitar and flute, and then there was another piece written soon after that for guitar and flute. It wasn't then on the album. I have, you know, guitar and violin, guitar, cello, uh, many different combinations, and then larger combinations. Recently, I had wonderful guitarist Rob Nathanson commissioned several pieces for me for more unusual things. There's one piece for soprano sax and guitar, which is an interesting combination. There's another piece for soprano, violin, uh, soprano, saxophone, and with various saxophones and two guitars. So it's you know, very interesting possibilities. He also commissioned a piece for soprano, violin, and guitar. There's so many wonderful possibilities out there.
I had heard an album years ago, and I wish I'd bought it when I had the opportunity. But it was a Baroque program, and it was guitar, flute, and oboe,
Ah,
and it was, and of course, the guitar playing the continual part, which means chord, 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 chord. Eat your Wheaties, you're going to be busy.
yeah, right, that's right. And
But
without much thanks for it either.
yeah, true. But it was, an absolutely delightful program, and again, like I say, I'd like to be able to find it. Also, Anthony Gleist, do you know Anthony?
Yes, sure.
He wrote that. He's written a couple of pieces with guitar and choir.
Oh,
That
yes, right.
Oh my God, they're gorgeous,
That's a
just
beautiful
gorgeous.
combination. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's a beautiful combination.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love the piece for
and
by Casanova Tedesco for
so
choir and guitar.
yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah. I just think I just think it's beautiful, beautiful combination, and I
yeah,
was very happy to see how well it worked. He did a super job,
yeah.
so that was super duper nice too. So, before I say goodbye, we do have to talk about briefly. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Playing with Ease, your book, and Focal Dystonia. If you could touch on that just briefly.
Well, there are two different topics, really. Playing with Ease is the book that I wrote for Oxford University Press, a book that is really a summary of over 40 years of teaching on my part, teaching about using the understanding of the body, the anatomy, in playing the guitar so as to make the guitar an easier thing to play. And actually not just guitar, but all instruments. So focusing on things like postural alignment, um, considerations, specific considerations about parts of the body, the face, for instance, all the parts of the face and various parts of the body that can accumulate a lot of tension and how to undo that tension. There's a chapter in there about right hand technique, specifically a chapter about left hand technique. The most radical chapter is the fifth chapter, which is about my large muscle ideas, which I developed to cure myself of focal dystonia, which I can speak about briefly in a moment. So chapter 5 is really a kind of a very brief manual on how to cure focal dystonia, but also how to prevent injuries in general, not just focal dystonia. And then there's a chapter on practicing ideas and a chapter on preparing for a concert. So the book is very wide ranging, and I'm very fortunate that people seem to love the book and have been helped by the book a lot. I'm constantly getting these wonderful bits of feedback from people telling me they really love the book and it's how much it's helped them. That's very, very gratifying to me, of course. And of course, I use it and my ideas in my teaching at the Manhattan School of Music. So you know, that's been a very exciting part of my career. And a less exciting part of my career is experiencing 12 years of focal dystonia, where fingers curled into my palm without pain, which at the time in the early 80s, nobody seemed to know what that was, or maybe a few people knew, but not really. And I, had a miserable time and for quite a while trying to figure out how to fix this thing because my career was stopped dead in its tracks, as has been the case for many, many people around the world.
Sure.
And in my case, after trying to get other people to fix me, and they all failed, I turned inward and found my own solutions, developed my own ideas about large muscles and their importance in supporting what we do with an instrument. And over the course of 4 years of working with these ideas, I cured myself 100%. So that was back in 1996, and knock on wood, ever since then, I'm good.
Well, I am grateful for that. I'm grateful for your output. And I'm also grateful that you took time out of your morning to spend on the program. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure, Roger. Really nice to talk with you. Thank you so
And
much.
you as well. Thanks for joining us. Believe it or not, just doing that little bit helps to support the arts. And if you or someone you know plays the guitar or ukulele, you should go to my website, rogerhumphrey.com. There's a lot of stuff there that you might be interested in, and a lot of it's free, so you can't beat the price. And I hope you come back here real soon to listen to more episodes of Creative Conversations with Roger Humphrey.